Welcome to the Dataliction podcast. I'm so grateful you're here with us as always. Hey, my name is John.
And I'm Travis.
And this is the Dataliction podcast. We want to take data, we want to learn, and then move into action. But not just any action, the right actions that help us to grow on purpose. And today we're actually talking about the heart of growth. And I'm personally really interested in the discussion that we're going to have today with a very special guest, Traci. And so Traci is an expert in this field of helping leaders to grow without losing themselves in the process. I mean, Travis and I, we've had really incredible experiences at some very fast growing organizations. And this is a really important topic because I will say I've seen leaders lose themselves along the way, and I've also seen leaders not. And so breaking down what is happening, what's not happening, this is going to be a great conversation. Travis, I would love to hear from you because you can actually set us up with this guest today. Go ahead and take it away, introduce our guest, and then hand it over for a little bit of their own introduction.
Thank you, John. Man, I am super excited, Traci, for you to be on this podcast today. So thank you so much. We got connected through a group called C12, and we were just networking. And actually, several of our clients also use B23 strategies. And I have been impressed with Traci and her team and how they get to the heart of matter of leadership. And this has been something that's been near and dear to both John and I's heart, as like he said, we're growing and as we see other organizations do, but sometimes we can lose that heart. And when I was talking with Traci, she is just a wealth of knowledge, specifically on the stats that we're finding in businesses. And so Traci, love to hear from you. Please give us a little bit of insights in where you're seeing business and what you're up to today.
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I love the conversation, Travis, that you and I had a couple of weeks ago, just in our connection, and feel like I already sense the heart of who you guys are and how you actually lead your own businesses. So it is an honor and a privilege really to be with both of you today. And you're right. I mean, like for me and for my business partner, Janelle at B23 Strategies, our heart and desire is to really step in and walk alongside leaders at all levels to help them lead from a place of wholeness, to be honest. I mean, we are all whole people, body, mind, and spirit. We bring that whole person to work, and we can't be our best without wholeness. And we've seen such a shift, I mean, like in the marketplace, and I think also such a craving in the marketplace for an ability to get back to the realness and the humanness of what leadership and work really is. We kind of went through that phase probably several years ago, and we all remember it. It's kind of like the whole Six Sigma, type movement of like, we're moving everything to process, and process is super duper important, but not in losing people, because people is the greatest asset of any organization.
Traci, you referenced something right away that I want to dive into. And you mentioned that you've worked with leaders in multiple types and sizes of organizations. And I do think that founders that are just now starting, maybe they just reached their first million, and that's really exciting, but they think about these CEOs of 100 million plus organizations. And I think they think that maybe those are different types of people.
Yeah.
And so what are the differences between someone that's leading a smaller organization versus larger? And then what are the similarities that are really important for us to remember?
I think the similarities are in the fact that most of the time, regardless of the organization, we typically see a passion and a purpose to the work that they do. And also a clarity. And I think that is super important. I mean, they know what their roles are. They know what they're good at. They know what they're not good at. They're hiring and aligning themselves with people, to help them be the best version of themselves so they can lead the organizations well. I think where we see a little bit of disconnect, and honestly, why sometimes we really enjoy working with some of the smaller, companies. One, movement happens more quickly. We can get to transformation more quickly. When you have a very large organization, as you guys, I'm sure, are aware, I mean, like there's just so many layers, right? And there's a lot of varied opinions on certain things. Culturally, though, the shift, even as we're seeing, and I'm sure you guys can speak into this too with the people that you're working with, we're seeing a massive cultural shift in today's environment because the workforce is changing. We've got post COVID. I mean, the whole world blew up. I mean, and some of it has been great, but some of it also has left a lot of organizations that were unprepared, still sitting in this space of trying to catch up. And really, that boils down to what do employees want and what do they need, and they want to be seen, heard, and valued, and led well for their work. And the numbers don't align, and we can get into that obviously here in a bit. But I really believe that the one thing, if I were to name one word that stands out to me in a leader, either in a small organization or in a large one, is their heart and their desire, not only for performance but also for people.
Wow. You reference that people want to be led. And obviously, let's talk about these large organizations, over 100 million. Maybe they were a founder and they got it up to there. They were installed as the CEO, COO, one of these leaders. But the reality is, deep inside of them, if they're like everyone else, is going to struggle and battle with imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And this concept of, am I really cut out for what I'm doing? And Tracy, my own personal example of this, I've been on stages doing various types of, speaking and music and performance and all these different things since I was very young. And I'm no longer what I would consider very young, maybe still a little young. That said, I've been doing it for many decades. And still to this day, when I step on a stage, I struggle with thinking I'm good enough for it. And so I know that this permeates all the way through every organization, and especially leaders who have people looking at them who want to be led. And then they think, I don't know if I'm the person for the job. How do we get through that imposter syndrome? And how do we find our heart in the midst of that?
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is normalize it because there was actually a study done by Harvard Business Review a couple years ago. It states that over 70% of leaders struggle with imposter syndrome at some stage, place, time. So in that normalization, I think that we have to really kind of start digging deep. And this is a lot of the work that we do is really kind of aligning, and helping the person understand who they are. I mean, we work from the premise of believing that, you know, we've been given kind of everything that we need and it's our responsibility to develop it. And so if we don't know who we are, we don't know how we can most be effective in our leadership, and we don't know how to show up because I do believe that imposter syndrome is very linked to identity. I've seen it. I've experienced it in my own life. I've seen it in a lot of people that we've helped, coach over the course of the years. And so that clarity of really understanding self is really, really important. And it's what self looks like in health, and what self looks like in stress, and what self looks like in change, and what self looks like in relationship. So I'm like, it's a multifaceted, but that's where it starts.
Yeah, so I'm hearing an interesting focus that it is on who I am and not necessarily what I do, even though I'm being paid for what I do, and the balance between talent and identity. And then the concept of exhaustion
Yeah.
as well. I want to make sure and go right into that because I know a lot of leaders are tired. I am tired a lot. Travis is tired a lot. And sometimes tired is good. It means you put in the effort, but also sometimes uh, are you suggesting that maybe my exhaustion is coming because I'm leaning in more on what I do instead of who I am, or I'm struggling with who I am? Talk to me about that talent, identity, and
Yeah.
exhaustion.
Um, Exhaustion is a real thing, and it's creating a lot of dynamic, to be honest. I mean, in the workplace and in our personal lives. I mean, because we are driven by a motor. We've got our phones, we've got all these things coming at us a gazillion miles an hour. Um, our to-do lists are longer than we can handle on a daily basis, and they, repeat till next week. So we're constantly being looked at, or we're constantly like visualizing things that need to be done. That just I mean, that's exhausting in its own right. So again, I think it goes back to the recognition of understanding the humanness of who we are. I mean, like, yes, we have daily tasks that we need to get done. We have things that have to happen. We also have to surround ourselves with the right people, because exhaustion also can almost fuel imposter syndrome. And in that space of it being fueled, a lot of times self-preservation kicks in. And when self-preservation kicks in, a lot of times we isolate. So we pull ourselves inward, and then, if you will, the voices that we hear in our head that tell us, that we're not good enough or we can't do or whatever, they get louder. So the importance of surrounding yourself with even a really trusted advisor team to be able to share day to day, like, what are you coming in with? Like, where's the struggle? What's the priority? Where's the focus? Like, again, normalizing that whole person and allowing them to kind of, be themselves in these spaces, aligned with the work, obviously, that need to be done. But if you look at the overarching elements of well-being, right now we're looking at about 50% of people in the US that consider themselves like thriving, which basically means we have 50% of us daily that are either struggling or in despair. And when you link that up to like the engagement numbers within the workplace, uh, it just goes to show, and I think a lot of HR people, if I'm being honest, a lot of HR folks are really, they're understanding this concept. They're trying to get the feel of, like, what is it, like, what is well-being? Like, we want to make sure that we're supporting our teams, from a place of well-being. But to be honest, they're not necessarily doing it the most efficient and effective way. It's they're throwing out programs, they're throwing out, this or that. But the truth is, like, how do we help people understand why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, how they're feeling the way that they're feeling, and what to do about it? Like, the action steps that go along with that. Because, when you're burned out at work, you are like super stressed. And actually, right now, about 50% of managers are considered to be burned out at work, which, and management at that level, and Travis knows this, is that I'm pretty passionate about this. Um, the manager level of any organization is the heartbeat of the organization. 70% of engagement is linked at that management level. And so, what are our organizations doing to invest not only in, the coaching of their C-suite, but really the coaching and the development of the managers that fall and hold the responsibility for all of the bodies that they're, been hired to serve. And there's a lot of reasons, for that too, but it's breaking it down to help each individual understand, and create a common language within the workplace, and normalize that stress and well-being and, all the things that come with that are normal. But we need to make sure that we're putting stops and processes in place to give ourselves the space to kind of, um, to eliminate some of those stressors. If that answers your question,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Traci, no, that was really good, Traci. I really appreciate that. And I'm just curious, you've given some really great truths in here. I love the fact that you're saying surround yourself with an advisor team. What can you give me some practical examples
Yep.
of that? Like, what does that look like? Like, do I just I call it my best friend and I'm like, that's my advisor team? Like, how do I make sure I have the right advisors on my side?
I always say trusted voices. I mean, everybody and their brother is going to give you an opinion of something, right? Oh, you should do this, you should do that. We never, I mean, like, you should never should on anybody. That's what we always, always try to say. But I think that it's the openness and the willingness to be vulnerable, and also the openness and willingness to look at those relationships that you have in your life and put guardrails around the ones that you actually trust to speak into you. And I think
Mhm.
most people can say that we all have at least one person, like, at least I would hope so, that one person that we feel that we could pick up the phone and call and say, okay, I'm struggling with this today, or man, I just like, I got broccoli in my teeth, or whatever. To hold up a mirror in the lens. I mean, like, I mean, like, I need some truth in, in what's happening. And, the way that I approach it is that I'm going to give you the truth, and then I'm going to hug you. I'm going to hug you as you come out of it, and then we're going to formulate a plan, and then
Yeah.
we'll grow through it. But a
Yeah.
prime example. This happened to me. Like, literally, this, no joke. This week, I was having lunch with a friend who's also a coach. She's a trusted advisor, and I was, I was struggling with some things, like thinking about some things I wanted to accomplish in 2026. And she looked at me across the table and she said, "Girl, here's the deal. You are choosing to sit in comfort." And she said, "You have, when you should be focused on legacy." And she said, "So you have two choices. It's either the discipline, or was it, it's either focusing on the discipline or focusing on the disappointment, because that's what's going to happen if you don't step out of step out of comfort." And I
Oh,
mean, and it was,
what
yeah,
a great
and it was like,
friend.
and it. I actually posted about it on LinkedIn last night, because it just, again, went to show me. I mean, like, of course, we walk alongside, you know, leaders and teams, and and they consider us to be the, you know the voice of authority, or whatever it may be, when they bring us alongside of them. But the truth is, we all need people in our lives that are calling us up and calling out the crap that's holding us back. Because I mean, I believe that we're all here to create, you know some type of legacy, and like, we have a purpose to our life.
Yeah.
And so, if we want to have the impact that we've been designed for, we really have to turn inward and start figuring out where we're getting in our own way. And that looks different. It may look different today than
Mhm.
it looks yesterday, and it'll be different tomorrow, because we're ever evolving.
Man, that is such great truth right there. Discipline or you'll have disappointments. Wow, that's such great truth there. I'm curious, like when you work with these organizations, what is kind of like your first steps as you start working with, maybe like who do you usually work with first? Maybe you guys do some coaching and you talk a little bit about HR, but how do you typically work with organizations that are very successful, do this
Yeah.
well?
There are different approaches, and we tend to customize based upon where we see the actual need, within the organization. But if I were to break it down, I mean, like, leadership starts at the top, and it filters down. So, like, the concept of having leaders on board with really focus like really focused intention around, um you know employee growth and employee development, and creating psychological safety and an environment where people feel like they can be seen and heard. um Also, though, stepping into action with that. And so, like, leading by example, because I mean, like, leaders need to show the people that they're leading that they have skin in the game, and that they're doing this. So we tend to start, at least in conversation, at the top, and we kind of get buy-in, and we do coaching, at the top as well. And we use a framework that's pretty loose, that we call STAR. And the reason that we use this framework is because, even though we've got content for days, it gives a real easy way for us to kind of do evaluation and help people have those moments of clarity, that they then can start to say, "Oh gosh, like, I see this in myself. I probably need to work on this. How do we tackle that?" Because then you get the ownership and the buy-in. So, STAR, regardless of whether we're working with individuals, teams, or we're doing coaching cohorts, we don't really take into account that we are whole, like I said, whole people, right? I mean, like, we are made up of nature, nurture, and choice. There are certain things in our life that we are just naturally hardwired well to do, things that we just naturally show up in. But the nature piece of how we got here may make the expression of that a little bit different. And so, we go back, and sometimes people ask us this all the time, what's the difference between business coaching and therapy? And I'm like, a lot. 'Cause I am not a therapist. Um, I, I actually highly promote both. I believe that they're both very, very important. But, the basis of our basic explanation of the difference is that with therapy, you really dig back into the past. And for coaching, we say, okay, how can the past inform us and where do we go in the future? And so it's much more future driven. But we start with story because, you know, there are things that pop up in childhood, in personality, in tendency,
Mhm.
in wins and losses, in ghosts of your past that inform and basically create you to show up in a way that you're not even seeing or may not even realize. So we like to call that
Mhm.
by name first. And then we really lean in first or lean in secondly to that whole self piece. Like, what are you good at? Do you know what do you know what your strengths are? Do you know your personality tendencies? Do you know like what it's like to be on the other side of you when you are in a celebration mode or when you are in a stressful mode? Um, how do you show up at work versus how do you show up at home? Like, how do you show up for
Mhm.
yourself? I think that is a big piece of all of this is that concept of really like, if you look at all of your circles of influence, the center circle is yourself. And whatever comes out of
Mhm.
you is going to affect of those around you. So, really making sure that that's healthy. And then we go into action and alignment, and that alignment piece again kind of goes back to the clarity of who are you? Like, what are your values? What do you stand for? How do you want to show up? And is the work that you do allowing you to show up in that way? And if it's not, then what needs to change? Then the action piece kind of comes along the line of stacking all of these things together to create those daily habits, the daily actions, the imperfect actions. Like perfectionism is ridiculous, right? I mean, everybody thinks that if it's not perfect, it's not, it's not worth it. And that's part
Right,
of the issue
right.
that we're into. Even I think even
Yeah.
in personality, if you take it all the way back to imposter syndrome, we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform at a level that is just not realistic. Expectation is the death of everything. I mean, like, so
Mhm.
really understanding and kind of creating that alignment and making it okay to say, like, we don't have to hit a home run every day, but we do have to at least step up to bat and take a swing
Yeah.
and then evaluate what that swing looks like, and then all of it
Mm.
leads to basically relationships and resilience. And that relationship piece is the relationship that we have with ourselves, the relationship that we have with others, and the resilience that comes from that healthy space of community and creating an environment where people are working toward the same goals and they truly see one another, can appreciate one another's talents, tendencies, and can be willing in a safe environment to call up the things that they see that are getting in the way of the system's or team's performance.
Mm.
Tracy, I want to address maybe some of the people who are struggling with the maybe
Yeah.
squishy, soft nature of talking about our heart. And even if we think about the way that $100 million company will dress, maybe they dress in suits and in ties compared to the $1 million startup where they're in jeans and t-shirts and everyone's high-fiving. There is obviously a difference in the organizational structure, but I fear
Mhm.
that there are some people who discount these personal developments as something that's more for smaller companies than large. And that's largely due to ROI, these nasty letters that make us think it's not about
Yeah.
people anymore. So that said, I would love to hear your wisdom on how you've actually seen ROI on investing in people, because I have a hunch that since people are your most valuable asset, when you invest into them, you might be able to get a better return on that investment. Yeah, talk to us about ROI and emotional
Yeah. So,
intelligence.
actually, it was Goldman released a study several years ago that spoke to the fact that emotional intelligence actually is one of the greatest drivers to success. It's about 90% of highly successful people also have very, very high levels of emotional intelligence. Naturally, emotional intelligence, if you asked people if they were emotionally intelligent, 90% of people will raise their hand and tell you that they are. But in truth, that number is about 10%. So, the awareness piece of you may think that you are emotionally intelligent, um, and you might be at the surface level, but the truth is when you start peeling back the layers of the onion, like there's a lot that really surfaces to help people see, oh wow, like I'm getting in my own way. I'm the one that's actually preventing the highest level of performance for myself and for the organization. A lot of times like people get discontented, I mean, they'll be like, oh, my boss is such a jerk and all that, blah, 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 blah. Yes, all of that probably is true as well. You know what I mean? But at the same time, again, it goes back to the focus of what is it that we really desire and what is it that we really want. And, when we talk about like engagement and ROI, um, I think that there's a lot of statistics around it, but I mean, it's basically the I- one of the stats from a coaching perspective says that, the amount of investment that you make in people for their development will actually produce a 7% or a 7 times return. So whatever that dollar amount is, you can expect to see 7 times that coming out on the other side. But when you look more like holistically and like globally and thinking about even how performance of organizations work, and what they're like the metrics and the numbers that they're tied to, engagement is the number one driver. And if employees are developed, they are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work. And they're also 5 times more likely to tell others that they work for an organization that's worth working for. And when we're looking in today's environment, when we think about like, even I think some of this, when you're talking about the stuffiness, the suits and all of that, and I may offend someone when I say this, but just coming from historical experience, sometimes in those spaces, um, they're ego driven, and the humility that needs to come at the leadership level is important, because we can say all day long, and I've seen this and I've experienced it, and I think culturally we're seeing the shifts too. I mean, like, the baby boomers and the Gen X higher end, level, they grew up in an environment where work was part of their identity. I mean, like, I'm going to go make more money. I'm going to climb the ladder. Everything's got to be, up and to the right. And the generation that's coming behind us, they're saying they had parents who did that and they suffered from it because of whatever fell down in their own circles. And now they're saying, no, I want balance. I want purpose in my life. I want to have a good job. I want to be able to do the things that I love to do every day. And I want people to give me coaching. I don't want people to, I want them to pull me up. And so the price of, there's a great quote. I actually wish I had it written down right now, but I don't. I'm actually listening to the new Brene Brown book called Strong Ground. And she's talking about how crazy it is that when you think about any professional, whether it is a professional athlete, a professional team, whatever it may be, they all have coaches, and they all probably have multiple coaches, because they can't get to the level of performance that they want to get to without it. And they have the natural talent, but they need the coaches to help grow that into it being, truly like their key strength and their differentiator. And she said, what would it be like, if you have the Philadelphia Eagles, or I'll say the Colts since we're in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Colts come play and they don't have any coaches. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, because there's always this desire and this need to pull people up. So if you think about organizationally, um, where I see it being a little bit of a danger zone, if you will, between like the bigger organizations, and I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, some of the bigger organizations and some of the smaller organizations, is that they're trying to equate dollars and cents through the concept of, well, if we're not hitting our mark, so going back to the whole performance measures, if we're not hitting our mark, we need to cut X, Y, and Z. If we're not selling more, then we need to cut X, Y, and Z because we have to hit the number, and everything gets so drawn to the number. But what they're not taking into consideration is that level of pressure and that level of not hitting the target and actually growing the capacity inside the organization of the people. You can't make up the difference. Like, people will drive, the human spirit will drive performance if it's engaged. And
Yeah, Tracy, what I'm hearing from you that's very fascinating is that ROI is not just about what you make out of your investment, it's about what is
yeah,
not lost along the way. Because too oftentimes we will put money into a project and we will suggest, if I don't see, I put $1 in, and for every $1 in, I see $3 come out. But what we're missing on the backside is, if you don't put that dollar in, are you going to lose another dollar or $2 along the way? So I appreciate both sides of this. First, you're suggesting there indeed is
yeah.
ROI. You're going to see, you're going to go up and to the right. But more importantly, is what you are protecting from losing by making sure to investing in this. Tracy, as we kind of wrap up here, I want to talk a little bit about the tools that you may use. You mentioned the idea of onions, of being able to discover if I am one of the 10% that are emotionally intelligent, and perhaps I am the 9 out of 10. Um, and also, I love giving people a chance to kind of sit in the back row and kind of evaluate. So maybe we have some people that are saying, maybe I have an ego. I would like to double check my ego on my own. What's a way to find out if I'm emotionally intelligent or not, Tracy? Because that might be the first step, is them just identifying, I actually do think I need this, and probably my team needs it as well. So what's a good step for me to learn if I'm emotionally intelligent or
I think the
not,
first step
Tracy?
in learning that you're emotionally intelligent is even just to ask yourself, you know, how do I view the world around me? Like, what do I see when I look at the world around me? Like, if we look at the divisiveness of the world around us by today's standard anyway, I mean, like, you see where people are, like, if your first intention is to say, well, I'm right and that other person is wrong, there may not be a lot of emotional intelligence right there, without, digging a little bit deeper under the hood. But I think the bigger thing is to say, like, what are you doing to kind of step outside of yourself? Like, what how aware are you of others? And truly, I mean, John, to be honest, and this is why we promote the whole concept of starting with self first. It's so hard to be others aware and actually be more compassionate and understanding toward others when you don't have that same level of understanding towards yourself, because we can't give what we don't possess. So, at the end of the day, if I am only looking at things through my lens, and my lens is this big, I mean, compared to the world's lens, right? I mean, like, I'm seeing such a fraction of what could be. So it really starts with the heart of saying, okay, like, I'm going to look at myself. We actually have a tool for it. We call it "Know Yourself to Lead Yourself." But we we start with this premise and this process of saying, "How do I show up? What's it like to be on the other side of me?" If I can look back over the course of the last 6 months, and maybe I haven't been able to achieve my goals, or maybe I've been struggling in relationships, um, what's my natural tendency there? And is that tendency, is it serving me well, or is it harming? Is it doing harm? And if that is the case, then what do I need to do about it to change the result? Um, Really kind of honing in on self, but tools wise, I mean, like, we pride ourselves on that. We've got, between Janelle and I, we have several different certifications, but the tools that we like to use most fundamentally, because we do truly believe in transformation, not training. I mean, like, anybody can go get a training class. We're seeking organizational health and transformation, because that's what actually produces results on the other side. But really, we start with tools that are just very scientifically validated, like Gallup Strengths, for example. Also, tools that help people see themselves for who they are and not who they're not. We're not focusing in on fixing the weaknesses. You're only going to grow a few percentages if you do that. What we're trying to do is identify and help the person that we're working with see all the amazing things that they have hardwired in themselves, and then start that as the foundation. So know your strengths. Know what you do better than 33 million other people in the world. I mean, like, know what your tendencies are. What's your personality? Like, what's your Enneagram number? Like, what box do you keep yourself in? How's it serving you or not serving you? Start there with some basic fundamentals. And then that alignment piece is huge in terms of values. I mean, like who are you? What drives you at the core? So start there. And then organizationally, I cannot speak enough to the fact that anybody after this podcast could go type into chat GTP, because I use chat now a lot more. I can't wait to pick your guys' brains on a different day about how to even maximize AI more. But even when I think about like typing in chat GTP, you can ask it, give me this, like the greatest, like most recent data sets on engagement and the cost of that. I mean, like, lack of engagement is costing the world $9.1 trillion annually. It's costing the US over $1 billion annually. And so it's just focusing in on looking at how do we do things different than we've done them in the past, because like it's time for a shift.
Yeah. Traci, man, this has been amazing. Know yourself to lead yourself. I love that. And as we're looking at, like starting with self and actually centering yourself, is all things that I think about. And knowing that, and this is what I love, that you stated that cannot give what you do not have. So I was like, oh my goodness. So if you don't have empathy, it's really hard to give that away. And so knowing who you are, this is extremely valuable. So Traci, as we're kind of wrapping up and we're working through this, give us, how can people get in touch with you?
B23 Strategies is our website. You can go to b23strategies.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We have B23 Strategies on LinkedIn. We also have Traci Cheatham at LinkedIn. We have Janelle DeWolf at LinkedIn. We are starting a podcast starting next year, so we'll stay focused on that. And even in our own willingness and desire to grow, because I tend to like to live under a rock, we are becoming a lot more social and we'll be a lot more active on social media. So we'd love to have people come along, follow us, and my desire, as always, is to lead by example. So, I mean, we're going to be talking about some of these tougher things that are holding people back, and we're going to give them tools and resources to help them start breaking through some of these things that are preventing the performance that they desire and deserve. And my heart really goes out, honestly, to the managers in the mid-level right now, because I know that that's where the tide turns. And that's where we really start to see companies thrive, when they can put the focus where the majority of the people are.
Traci, thank you so much for your time today. And Travis, thanks for all your follow-up questions and your engagement. The thing that keeps resounding in my mind is, what does it feel like to be on the other side of me? And I'm so grateful. If you have listened all the way through this episode, you owe Traci and me and Travis 5 stars and good comments and likes and shares and subscribes. We'd love to continue to share what we are learning, and you're part of this community. So please make sure, do your part and support this podcast. You can also go onto our LinkedIn or our website and sign up for our newsletter. Travis, you get to do this every single week. Share a little bit about what that newsletter looks like and why people should sign up.
Yeah, so go to our website, you go to dataliction.com, and it's a 15% weekly lift. So we try to give you guys some real actionable insights on what you could do for your business to help increase traffic, increase ROI. Maybe that might be a bad word in this conversation, but it help increase quite a bit. We go through a lot of stats and a lot of updates that we're seeing in the market. And so we're wanting to give you those formulas to be able to help out your business and help
And in the spirit of growth,
you.
Just so you know,
That's
Travis,
awesome.
I signed up yesterday.
Oh,
there you go. Well, hey, thank you again for listening to the Dataliction podcast. Just as a reminder, my name is John.
And I'm Travis.
And we're going to keep taking data, turning it into action that comes from the heart, and take that heart all the way into growth. And we will see you again next time.